Well, happy Sunday, and I appreciate you joining me here this morning. Welcome back to all the new subscribers. Well, the hurricane season has been quieter than expected outside of Major Hurricane Aaron. However, we still got a couple of months to go here, and things are looking like they're going to pick back up. We're watching low pressure forming off the coast of North Carolina by early next week, a new area to watch over the eastern Atlantic, which now has a high chance of becoming our next tropical depression or storm later on in the upcoming week, and more areas to follow after that. So we're going to break down what's going on here in the tropics, why things are a little bit wonky and maybe not as active as you might expect, and what's to come in the coming weeks. If you have not already become a subscriber, it's free to hit that subscribe button below, and that'll give you updates on when videos come out and community posts as well. It gives you a chance to be a part of the community that I'm working on growing here. So I appreciate that support. We're going to get right to it here. Here's a look at Zoom Earth, and you can see things are not overactive across the country and across the world. You can see fairly quiet weather over the United States outside of the southern plains where things have been a little bit spicy at this time. But over the Atlantic, we've got a new area that now has a 70% chance of becoming our next tropical depression or storm. And I do think it's probably going to be a few more days before this is really going to be watched more closely. It's just taken its time over the eastern Atlantic over some dry air. But even over the Pacific, things are fairly busy over the eastern Pacific here with a disturbance that has a 70% chance of development and another area that has a slight chance of development south of Hawaii. The western Pacific, though, has been awfully quiet with no name systems here. So this is quite unusual, and I'm going to break down why I think that's going to be the case. So fresh from the Hurricane Center, we now have an area that is very limited in development. It's probably going to take a few more days to do much. And I doubt it'll even be an area of investigation, AOI, which the next one would be 92L. 91L, we all remember, was very underachieving, kind of in the same area. This one may have a little bit better shot, I think. And the reason why is we're seeing a little bit more instability and less dry, stable air around it. But either way, until it forms, we're not going to issue a track map like other folks have, because that may be premature. Kind of limited right now, moving west-northwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour. And at this point, something to watch in the islands, but generally speaking, I think it's got more of a chance of being a recurving system. You'll want to watch it more in Bermuda, though, as we get into the week after next. Here's a look at the Atlantic basin. I'm going to make this a little bit larger for you all to see here. Tropical tidbits. And you can see right now, really nothing of major concern, but our wave is starting to get a little bit spicier here southwest of the Cabo Verdes. You can see there is an upper level trough to the north of it here, so a little bit unstable, but also some hostile wind shear. Over the northern Atlantic, we've got a front here. We're watching low pressure forming here off the coast of South Carolina. This is going to drift northward here and will have some impact on the weather over the coming days, bringing some rain and wind into parts of the eastern Carolinas, Virginia, and maybe eventually up the East Coast as well. But the Gulf remains about as quiet as it gets this time of the year. And, I'm starting to think that there's less and less of a chance of there being a major hurricane impact on anywhere except maybe Florida this season. But again, really too early to tell, as we're going to be watching the Central American gyre get going here over the coming weeks. That's the area to watch late September into October. And it could be a late season in the Gulf, or it could be a non-existent season. We just don't quite know at this point. For the islands right now, we've got an upper level low to your north. We do have some scattered showers and storms, but nothing showing signs of organization at this time. So really, it's just the area off the Carolina coast that we're watching. And then this wave over here, and eventually another wave is forecast to follow. And that's one to watch as well, as we get later into next week and beyond. Here's a closer look at what's going on here off the Carolina coast. You can see clouds picking up here and moving inland across the Outer Banks. We're going to see rain picking up here as well. And this is going to send some drier flow down into Florida. So we are going to continue to see a taste of false falls, what I call it, here across the Florida Peninsula this weekend into early next week. That dry flow comes in, and some pretty nice weather across the rest of the southeast, with the exception of this area of low pressure. We have an upper level low spinning here to the southeast of Bermuda. That at this point shows unlikely chances of forming into anything at the surface. So good news there at this point. Taking a look at the Gulf, again, this is pretty darn quiet. You can see the boundary has made its way all the way down to the Yucatan and south of the Keys. I'm going to stop it here and just draw it for you all real fast here. And my artwork is not going to be the best, but you can see this front down in here continues to bring dry air down into northeastern Mexico across South Florida, and that's going to limit rain chances over the next couple of days. We do want to watch these fronts as they come farther south. Water temperatures are extremely warm, especially here in the northwestern Caribbean, but the wind shear and the sinking air aloft means this is going to be difficult to get something to form, at least for the moment. Something we need to watch, though, in the longer term. Here's a look at the rest of the Caribbean. You can see why nothing is forming at this point. We've got a lot of rain, a lot of cloud cover over Central America. There's a bit of a gyre getting going here, but we also have a lot of wind shear, and there's an extreme amount of aloft some dry air here, which has been the case at least for the entire season. And outside of air mass storms, it's just very difficult for tropical activity to go on when the air is sinking. We need to have some rising air, and that is most certainly not the case. So we will count our blessings, I would say here. The rain is needed, but we certainly don't want tropical activity. Now, climatologically speaking, this area in here actually picks up a little bit when we get into October and even early November. We often will see storms form in here, and that's been the case the last several years. Hurricane Ian, Hurricane Helene, Hurricane Milton, and then going back to storms like Hurricanes Iota and Eta back in 2020, Hurricane Mitch, Hurricane Andrew, even Sandy. All of those storms formed down here in October, so we don't want to write it off completely, but right now we are certainly on borrowed time, and we will certainly enjoy that. Across the tropical Atlantic, pretty darn quiet until you see our wave entering the picture here at about 32 to 33 west. It's got a long time before it's any threat to land, and then there's actually a wave that's going to follow here, moving into Mali from Niger, and that's probably not even going to emerge into the Atlantic for another 4 or 5 days. And until it does so, tropical certainty and skill in the models is going to remain on the low side. Things are still pretty busy in the Pacific. We did have what was briefly Tropical Storm Mario here. It was not a Super Mario, though. It got sheared to bits. Trying to make a comeback as it moves west. It's actually picking up some increase in thunderstorm activity from the monsoon trough, the ITCZ, Intertropical Convergence Zone. This, believe it or not, has a higher chance of maybe redeveloping back into a new tropical system. I don't know if Mario is going to be the name or we're going to get the end storm, but either way, it is likely to continue on to the west and no threat to land. We're going to have to watch this area behind it, which has some possibilities of developing into a tropical system. And for the time being, we've got a strong area of high pressure over northern Mexico, and that's going to keep things, mainly speaking, moving out to sea. So nothing of great concern. We do also have a wave here, as you can see on my cursor here, moving to the south of Hawaii. But overall, things have been quite quiet across the globe. In fact, if you look at the northern hemisphere, we have about the expected number of named storms, but they've been quite a bit weaker. In fact, hurricane days, we've only had hurricanes out there for 31 days when normally we would have it for 71. So we're talking like a third of normal at this point. Major hurricanes 5, with the expected number being 10. This is global. This is not just the Atlantic. And then when you look at ACE, accumulated cyclone energy, and that is a multiplier of storm intensity marked by days and hours. So it basically calculates what's going on across the globe. And you're going to see that every single basin, with the exception of the South Indian Ocean, which is still in winter, has been below average. The North Pacific, we're running at about 60% of average. The Northeastern Pacific had such a busy start, but even that has fallen off below the normal pace. And the Northwest Atlantic, this is where typhoons often form, has been at half the norm. That's been the most extreme of the three here, is the Western Pacific, an area that is typically extremely busy, is running at less than half the norm. And so across the world, typically we get 334 ACE points, and we're sitting at 185. So something weird is going on here, and I'm going to try to unpack it. If you take a look here at our sea surface temperature anomaly, you're going to notice that our main tropical development regions here across the Western Pacific, across the Caribbean and Gulf, are actually running quite warm. So you would think there would be more and more storms, but that is not the case. What is going on is that because of these marine heat waves in the warming phase that we are in the Earth, despite the La Nina that's forming, it's actually too warm for storms to form and become strong. The reason why is that the atmosphere is a lot warmer, And when you've got a very warm upper level atmosphere, that actually creates stability in sinking air. So what's going on is it's actually too warm for major storms. Is it going to stay that way the whole season? Unlikely. We are going to see MJO pulses where the air will be forced to rise. But right now, that is actually the culprit for the fact that seasonal forecasts are not doing well. We expected the warm waters and the emergence of the La Nina here to create the conditions that would be favorable for more and especially intense storms. What's going on is we're seeing fewer storms, and outside of some major rapid intensification in storms like Hurricane Aaron, it's just not really favorable to see a large scale active pattern. And in particular, we've got this NPM here, which is extremely positive. The Northeastern Pacific mode is extremely positive. And I think that is actually going to be something that drives a colder January and February, maybe more snow over at least the Great Lakes and maybe mid-South. I don't know that the East Coast just yet, or certainly the Carolinas and Southeast, but could lead to a much more active start to our middle and second half of winter after what should be a fairly quiet start. So we're going to take a look at that in future videos. I'm not going out there with these ridiculous seasonal forecasts for winter being crazy like I've seen out there. I think that's honestly foolish and certainly not something that a trained meteorologist should be doing. But I do think we could certainly see some extremes coming up this winter. But let's get back to the tropics here first. And you can see water temperatures are quite warm around Atlantic Canada. They're very warm across most of the Gulf, across the Southwest Atlantic and the main development region. And these anomalies have actually come up some. If you go back here to the beginning of the season, it was cooler than average over the main development region, very warm in the Gulf. Now you can see that balance coming where the heat is being transferred from the Gulf into the main development region. So I think we're going to see more storms, but at this point, it's still difficult to get too specific on that. And here's what I'm talking about. The Western Pacific is really running toasty. I don't know how long records have gone for. You can't go back and look centuries and centuries ago to see where we are, but certainly it's warmer than you would expect and warmer than at least over the last 30 years. And in particular, the Northeastern Pacific is running quite warm. And that is something that I think could send some shock waves as we get later into the winter season. So pretty interesting stuff here. Looking at the Atlantic basin, it has cooled significantly off the coast from Georgia into the mid-Atlantic. And you can see the heat is being redistributed to the poles from the tropics. And that doesn't mean we are out of the woods for an East Coast strike. I think that's certainly still possible. But this, for the time being, is just a factor of all of the storms that have been sitting out off the East Coast and moving up, and the troughs that are driving them in that direction. So certainly an interesting phenomenon going on, but nothing we have never seen before at this time. Now, speaking of that, we are seeing low pressure forming down here off the coast of the Carolinas. And if you look over the coming couple of days, you're going to see low pressure tracking up towards North Carolina. This is late tomorrow night, early on Tuesday, and then probably moving onshore in the morning on Tuesday, bringing a stronger belt of wind and onshore flow to the Hampton Roads area, to the southern Chesapeake, to inland areas of southern Virginia. And this right now, I don't think has a chance of becoming something tropical. It does have a slight chance of maybe becoming subtropical, but you're going to see it's kind of short-lived. By the time we get past Wednesday and Thursday, it kind of gets absorbed in this bigger trough and gets lifted out to the northeast. Now, I'm going to talk about what that means here in the couple of slides coming up, but you can see here right now, it's definitely got a symmetric cold core with it. It may try to gain some asymmetric warm core as it moves over the Gulf Stream here in the next couple of days, but pretty unlikely at this point to become a tropical storm. Could it become subtropical? Well, it's a shallow area of warm core. So the fact that it's pretty shallow and it's kind of attached to a front out there means I think it's unlikely to become a tropical storm or even a subtropical storm. And you're going to see the water temperatures come down substantially as this leaves the Gulf Stream here when we get into Tuesday morning and then comes inland Tuesday evening into eastern North Carolina. But we're going to give it at least a little bit of a chance to maybe gain some sort of tropical characteristics as it does so. Either way, the winds are going to start to pick up, as you'll see here. We're going to start getting some gusty winds across the Outer Banks. When we get into this afternoon, some gusts around 30 miles per hour, getting breezy as well in places like Fayetteville, Raleigh, Wilmington, even up to Virginia Beach, but not really a strong system at this point. Overnight into tomorrow, the system actually could pick up the wind speed somewhat here, and we'll see gusts of 30 to 40 miles per hour around the Outer Banks here later tomorrow into tomorrow night. But not really a big windstorm at this point. Here's a look at the NAM model, and you're going to see it's possible that this could produce some pretty nasty winds. In fact, up to 70 miles per hour, but that's going to be 100 miles off the coast here during the night tonight. Now, those winds do move northwest, and around Cape Hatteras, we do have the possibility of seeing a period of 50-mile-per-hour wind gusts. Even around Ocracoke and Cape Lookout, we've got that possibility of 50 to 60-mile-per-hour winds. But when we get farther inland here, you can see those wind gusts are going to be quite a bit lower, 30 to 40 miles per hour. So, definitely going to be windy and kind of cool out there here over the next couple of days, but not really looking at a major windstorm at this point. I think the NAM model probably is going to embellish some of these winds. I don't think they're going to be this strong, maybe 30 miles per hour, but probably not 40 to 50. But something to keep an eye on here. I think more of a rainmaker than anything else. And if you look at the European model, you can see rain is going to stay mostly offshore today, but later tonight, it moves onshore, the Outer Banks. And then tomorrow, we see that rain moving inland during the morning hours, and maybe some heavier amounts here over portions of North Carolina. Perhaps some amounts that get over 3 inches in places like New Bern and Jacksonville and Swansboro and those areas possibly. And then northeastern North Carolina, southern Virginia here on Monday night and Tuesday. Some pretty big numbers are possible. So that's something that we're going to have to watch here. And the majority of that rain is going to be later tomorrow night, and during the day on Tuesday, spreading inland here, but unfortunately not really hopping over the mountains into places that need it even more. So some beneficial rain is coming. Some of it could be on the heavy side at this point. If you look at the NAM model, you'll see a similar look to the European, albeit we're looking at probably less rain than what the Euro is showing across the Piedmont, and more rain in places here like Goldsboro and Kinston and those areas, and all the way over to the inner banks of North Carolina. So could get pretty wet here. Farther north, we are going to see some rain moving up into Virginia here tomorrow night into Tuesday morning. The possibility here on the peninsula and in the Hampton Roads area of seeing a few inches of rain. So it's going to be soggy out there. As you see here, as this system lifts northward Tuesday night into Wednesday, we do see rain across the Delmarva, Maryland, southern PA, even eastern West Virginia. Amounts do come down some, though, as this moisture gets strung out. And then substantially less rain Wednesday into Thursday across the Northeast. So where we need the rain the most, we're not really going to see it, but we're going to at least get a little bit out of this. And there's a possibility these totals could still shift. But overall, most of the rain here is going to be for eastern North Carolina, southeastern Virginia, possibly even around the lakes region here of North Carolina and Virginia, right along the border. We could see briefly heavier rain. But for the mountains, probably not a big rainstorm, albeit it is the mountains, so we don't ever want to rule that out. But we're likely looking at a soggy day tomorrow, getting pretty wet tomorrow night into Tuesday morning around the Piedmont area, across central and eastern Virginia, and then Tuesday night and Wednesday over the mid-Atlantic, and into Wednesday night, Thursday morning across coastal New England. All right, taking a look ahead here at the tropics and storms to come, you're going to see a large area of high pressure near the Azores and a trough over the eastern United States this weekend. Now, that area of high pressure is going to weaken some and then rebuild between Bermuda and the Azores. But it's not a very strong area of high pressure. In fact, you see there's another trough coming down next weekend. What this likely does is it takes whatever feature is out there and begins to pull it northward and away from the United States. Now, it doesn't mean Bermuda escapes it, but this is certainly the setup for a recurve. Now, after this trough leaves and we get to the following week, you're going to see the ridge begins to build back in farther to the south. So next week, the ridge is going to be up in here. The following week, it drops down substantially. What that means is the wave that has left Africa is probably going to head up in this direction and around this high. But there's one after it that will have a chance of coming in farther south, and something we're going to have to watch in the islands in the coming days. I'll show you what our European model is showing here first. And you're going to see that where we've got this area of low pressure beginning to form Wednesday and Thursday, and likely avoiding the islands here and eventually strengthening and picking up. And this is something to watch in Bermuda in about a week and a half. But until it develops, this can change substantially, and I expect it probably will. But not a U.S. threat. The next feature, though, we have to watch around the islands. It's something that certainly has a possibility of impacting them. But again, it's probably going to be close to 2 weeks out. So here's a look at the AI forecast here, and you can see low pressure forming here when we get into Monday and Tuesday. It's weak. Here's the one behind it, by the way. So two areas we're going to be watching. So actually three. Here's area one, non-tropical. Here's area two. That's our area that has a high chance of developing. And then area three is going to come off of Africa here when we get into Monday and Tuesday. Now, flash forward here, you will see that area two is already gaining latitude. Area one's not tropical, so we're not going to talk about that. Area three is not gaining latitude. So if we move this along here, we're going to see a couple of different envelopes. We see what I think is going to be Gabrielle probably coming up in this direction and making the recurve. But here's the next area down in here that needs to be watched because it has more of a trend towards the Caribbean islands and possibly impacting them around the 22nd or 23rd, which is still about 8 or 9 days out. So at this point, a lot can still change, but you can see here, area one, most likely is a recurve. We've got a couple of areas to watch that may try to pull an Aaron and come closer to the Bahamas and come west of Bermuda, maybe come closer to the East Coast. But area two looks like something that we might be having to watch more closely here in a couple of weeks, moving through the Caribbean or perhaps towards the Bahamas. Here's a look at the European ensemble. That was the AI. And you can see the ensemble, for the most part, has development and a storm that maybe becomes our next hurricane and then likely heads up either east of Bermuda or west of Bermuda or near Bermuda. But either way, it is gaining latitude and likely a fish storm. Here's the track behind it here, moving into the Caribbean, as you can see real quick here. You can see that next one, something to watch. Maybe moving towards the islands or even towards the Bahamas. And of course, if that happens, we need to watch it in Florida and in the Southeast. Here's a look at our AI models. This is Google DeepMind here real quick, and you'll see development of our wave here possible when we get to Tuesday night and Wednesday. At that point, could be a tropical depression, maybe a tropical storm Wednesday or Thursday. And then beyond that, you're going to see, for the most part, aside from a couple of ensemble members flirting with Puerto Rico, for the most part, it is probably in the general direction of heading towards Bermuda. The one after it is definitely distancing itself with that ridge rebuilding. And something to watch in the islands here as we get to next Sunday around the 21st and then Monday the 22nd. But generally speaking, here's what I see happening. We see what I think would be Gabrielle moving in this direction and then either splitting off this way or turning out this way. Then the feature behind it moves in this direction towards the Caribbean. So let's see if I can change the color here and make this a little clearer for everybody. There's no, all right, black. So what should be Gabrielle's either going to recurve or it's going to come farther west and then recurve. What I think would be potentially Humberto has a better chance of moving into the Caribbean after that. And that's something in the United States we're going to have to keep an eye on towards the end of the month. Here's the other Google DeepMind, or this is the European ensemble, I'm sorry. And you can see here, again, kind of the same idea here. By the way, there's a third feature maybe to be watched after that, but it's area number one that we have to watch in Bermuda and maybe the Bahamas. Area number two, we need to watch in the islands of the Caribbean and then possibly the Bahamas, Cuba, and the Eastern United States. And then the Gulf, right now, doesn't look like something's going to form, but something we need to keep an eye on in the following weeks. And then finally here, you're going to see the European ensemble here with our system. Unlikely to make it past tropical storm strength until possibly north of the islands. And at that point in Bermuda, we've got to watch it. We do need to watch it in the Bahamas. But again, with this being more than a week away, a lot can still change. And we still don't know yet how this is going to play out. So just keep an eye on it at this point. I think by Wednesday or Thursday, we're probably going to have an invest. By Friday, probably a tropical storm, if not sooner. And then there's a possibility next weekend this could be a hurricane. If it does, it's likely a recurve. If it stays weak, then we need to watch it more carefully in the Bahamas, as it could be a late bloomer that rides a little bit farther to the south. So we're going to stop there. But I hope everybody has a wonderful Sunday. It is the Lord's Day. Sunday is a day of rest, at least what I believe as a Christian. And we just give God all the glory. I give God all the glory in every video that I do. It's just so important to me to understand, why we're here and what God has put us on earth to do. So Psalm 118:24 says, "This is the day the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it." And being glad, I think, is something that we really struggle with. Having joy is definitely a struggle. And that is the enemy grabbing you and saying, there's a God, but I'm here and I want to take you away from that joy. I want to take you away from just being glad and everything, and put all the negative that's going on in front of you first, and letting that basically pull you away from me. But as a Christian believer, I encourage you to repent and turn to God and embrace the challenges that you're going to run into every day, because trust me, it's worth it in the end. If you have accepted Jesus as your savior, eternal life and joy in heaven much outweighs the struggle you have here on earth. So I'm going to leave you there. I've got to get rolling and running to church here, but I hope everybody has a wonderful day, and we will see you soon. God bless.